Recorded Books presents The Golden Age Book 1, Lion, by Conn Iggulden, narrated by Mcinnerny.
Prologue. Pausanias took a deep breath, feeling calm spread through him. He exchanged a glance with his soothsayer, then rose from kneeling to walk the length of the hall, for once completely alone. The royal chamber of Sparta was cool after the heat of the morning. His armor clinked and rattled as he strode down the central aisle. He was unwounded, thanks to Ares and Apollo, his patron gods. He would endure no crippling disfigurement, no fever to steal away his wits. In the prime of his youth, he had already recovered from the hardships of the campaign. Of course, victory had a way of reducing aches and hungers. Only those who lost a great battle had to endure exhaustion. Those who won often discovered they could dance and drink enough for two. Pausanias was pleased he had managed to bathe before the summons. His hair was damp and he felt cool despite the heat. Yet he had not been long back in Sparta. His personal helots had still been cleaning his cloak when the runner came. Most of the dried blood and dust had been brushed out, as well as lines of salt his sweat had left behind. It would do. He draped a length of it over his shoulder as he walked, held with an iron clasp. When he had first immersed himself in the cold pool, Pausanias had watched a skin of oily filth moving away from him over the water. He still hoped it was a good omen. He had looked up from strange patterns and suddenly seen the red eyes of his helots, their trembling hands. He understood then, as he had not before. They grieved. He might have dismissed them for intruding on his thoughts. He had not. They too had fought at Plataea, losing thousands of their number against Persian infantry. It had been a kind of madness, and he still blamed the Athenians for inspiring them. Pausanias had warned Aristides not to let slaves think they were men. As he walked down the long nave, he thought the helots would not need to be culled that year. In normal times, when they grew too numerous, young Spartans would hunt them through the streets and into the hills, competing for kills and trophies. Yet as he had leaned back in the pool, he thought he'd seen something new in their eyes, something troubling. For just a moment he thought they looked on him as wild dogs might look on an injured deer. He shook his head. Perhaps he would order a cull after all, to remind them of their place. Curse Aristides! Helots were too numerous ever to be free. It was a knife edge Sparta chose to walk, the constant threat that kept them strong. He caught himself in his thoughts. He would not order any cull. His authority had ended the moment he crossed back into Spartan territory. No, it would be the man who had summoned him who would make decisions of that sort. When he reached the end of the hall, Pausanias dropped to one knee, staring at polished stone. He was somehow not surprised when silence stretched. The younger man wished him to understand which of them held power in that place. Pausanias told himself to be cautious. There was more than one kind of battlefield. "Stand, Pausanias," Pleistarchus said at last. The young king was still a month from his 18th birthday, but the fact that he was the son of Leonidas could be seen in the massive forearms thick with black hair. Pleistarchus had wanted desperately to command at Plataea, but the ephors of Sparta had forbidden it. They had already lost their battle king at Thermopylae. His son was the most precious resource Sparta had. Instead, it had been Pausanias who led the army of Sparta, standing in as the king's regent. It had been he who won an extraordinary, impossible victory, ending the great invasion and breaking at last the dreams of Persian kings. Pausanias swallowed, suddenly weary. His triumph had earned him no goodwill. He could see that. He raised his head and met the cold gaze of the king. At least whatever was coming would be quick. Athenians seemed to be 3/4 wind for all the talking they did.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?